Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. My guest today is Evelisse Capó. She is a pharmacist. She's plant-based. She's doing amazing things in the world with the Spanish-speaking community, and she's also going to demonstrate a recipe today that sounds very delicious called a Puerto Rican bowl. Please welcome her to the show. It's very nice to meet you. Even though we've met at a couple of conferences, it's nice to meet you like this as well.
Hi, Chef AJ. It's such a pleasure being here with you. I'm very honored.
I'm so excited. Is that a chef coat you're wearing? Because so I love it.
I am. So I traded my pharmacist coat for a chef coat.
Wow. So did you actually work as a pharmacist?
I did. I worked in clinical pharmacy, and I'm still a licensed pharmacist. But I about 15 years ago, I just slowly transitioned into teaching culinary medicine. And I loved it so much, I could not go back.
So in other words, plants are the prescription instead of pills.
Absolutely. They are the best medicine. They really are. And I know it sounds, cliche, but it's true. And the things that I have seen in the community, with patients and clients, within just a few weeks, I never saw behind the pharmacy counter. Never.
I was interviewing a doctor from India yesterday, and she said, medicine never cures.
That's correct. It just manages, controls to some extent numbers. We are happy that we have medications if you're in an accident, if you have to have surgery. We're obviously very grateful for modern medicine, but we have done very little in the areas of chronic disease prevention and reversal. And obviously we can't get that in a pill. There's no magic pill. So it is in our lifestyle, what we do, with our everyday choices.
Well, there kind of is a magic pill, and it's called the whole food plant-based diet.
Right. That is
not a pill, though, right? It's not a pill. Were you already plant-based when you were working as a pharmacist, or how did you decide to become plant-based?
Very, very great question. So I was not. I was actually a young pharmacist working, and the reason why my switch, I always loved cooking and nutrition. I even thought into going changing majors and going into nutrition, but I always loved science and other things as well. So I went into pharmacy school. I'm actually an engineer first. I went through 2 careers before I went into culinary medicine, and I was pregnant with my second child. I have 4 kids. And I got really sick after eating meat, and I got very scared. And I started to research about how food gets to our plate, and what I was feeding myself. And without even knowing it, I was transitioning to a vegan diet, not a whole food plant-based diet yet, but a vegan diet. And I started reading and immersing myself into all of these resources that I was finding. And I thought, I have to do this. I have to feed my children the best food available. So it took me some time, but I found PCRM, and that's when everything changed. And I totally changed into a whole food plant-based lifestyle.
That is fantastic. How long ago was that?
This was 18 years ago. So my daughter is now 19. When she was born, I just started to change. And by the time she was eating, I was already vegan and feeding her that way. So our oldest son, he actually was 6.5 when we did the transition. And so I could see a difference even with him, because he would get sick when he was a toddler, and I would have to take him to the pediatrician all the time. He would have ear infections and all of these things. And I did not have that same experience raising my 3 daughters, and even with him. So
that's fantastic. Was there any resistance to your children or maybe your husband when you switched the diet?
Yes, my husband was not on board initially. He actually, the first time I served him tofu, he looked at it. He was like, "What is this? And why are you doing this to me?" So it took him about a year, and I just gave him information, and he actually attended a few conferences with me. And when he heard other physicians and healthcare professionals, he's also in the science field. He's a chemical engineer. So he actually made sense when he actually saw the data. And my son was little, he was 6.5. And when he saw his dad changing his eating habits, then he was more interested into doing so. But really with our son, it was the compassion for animals that really made the click. So once he knew about what he was eating and he actually was educated on what happened to animals, he hasn't looked back, and he's 25 now.
That is fantastic. So your whole family stayed plant-based as a family.
Yes, our girls, they don't know any different. And they have actually helped their friends embrace this lifestyle. So it's always been like a family project. Like people come over to have for a party, and we put them to work. Like we're all cooking together and talking about food. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. How did you first hear of PCRM?
So I was very disillusioned with my career when I found out, what I was doing was totally not good, in the sense of being part of the problem. And I felt like trapped into that whole pharmacy scene. And I would say I'm like a recovering pharmacist. So, we do need pharmacists. And I think that, I had to take that path to learn and to appreciate where I am today. But I felt lost, and I wanted to find my tribe. So I found PCRM through a magazine. I was reading Vegetarian Times back in the day, and I saw a column. Dr. Bernard used to contribute to that magazine and write about different topics. And I researched it, and I found, wow, they have clinical studies that they do. They have all of these wonderful healthcare providers that they're working with. So I contacted them, and I wanted to be part of the team. So I became a Food for Life instructor. And yeah, I was pregnant with my last baby when I did the training, and I was teaching, and she was still like tiny, and I had an assistant. I would teach my classes. I was just really wanting to do this really bad.
That is fantastic. And do you do your classes in English, Spanish, or both?
Well, I've done them in both. Where I live in Florida, and so there are communities that are mainly Spanish speakers. So when I go there, I would teach the classes in Spanish and also in English. So that's something that's very close to my heart, and that's why I started the food pharmacy, to be able to offer workshops for different communities, and to come here to Puerto Rico, my hometown, and to be able to relay this information and have that flexibility. So that was, early on, and it's grown so much.
That is fantastic. What is the vegan or plant-based scene like in Puerto Rico? I've been there a few times because, on the holistic holiday at sea cruise, that's often one of the stops.
Yes, it's grown a lot over the recent years. 10 years ago, things were very different. But nowadays, there's a strong movement. There's a lot of plant-based restaurants that have opened. They have a farmer's market. And they have groups that get together. Before the pandemic, they were doing different events, and now a lot of things online. And there's an organization called Casa Vegana, which is like vegan house, which I'm a part of with Dr. Ana Negron. And we teach webinars every week to talking about different topics, health related topics. And we also do workshops on Sunday. Everything is done through Zoom, so anybody can join in that speak Spanish, obviously.
Why does that name Ana Negron sound familiar to me?
Oh, she's one of the originals. She's been practicing lifestyle medicine for over 30 years. She's in Pennsylvania. She's one of the PCRM members, and she's also a board member for the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, where I work, and I'm the director of content I'm a director of Spanish content and culinary content. So she's involved in so many different plant-based projects and organizations. And I think that when you went to the festival, she was a speaker there as well. So maybe that's why.
Nice. I'd love to have her on the show, perhaps.
Yes, she actually is an author as well. She wrote a magnificent book, and it's in English. So, she's from Puerto Rico, but actually I have her book right here. It's a great book, Nourishing the Body and Recovering Health. The Positive Science of Food. It's one of the best books about plant-based medicine that I have read.
Well, maybe you could introduce us.
Absolutely.
That's great. So you are preparing a recipe for us today. I asked you to say it because I can't pronounce it. Tell us a little bit about the recipe.
It's a Puerto Rican bowl. It's a Boricua bowl. And it's inspired on some of our traditional popular Puerto Rican ingredients and foods, plant-based foods, because most of the Latin American cuisine is actually founded on plants. Meat was rarely eaten and not very, commonly consumed. It was very expensive and not available. But with years, our way of eating has spread to other countries, and Puerto Rico is no exception. There's a McDonald's and a Wendy's in every corner, a lot of fast food and also a lot of fried foods, a lot of processed foods. So we're trying to teach people, going back into to our roots, into unprocessed foods. And I love power bowls whenever I'm traveling, especially because I don't have all of my spices. And so I love to just put together a quick bowl with ingredients that I have readily available, especially local. So wherever I am, I'm looking for local foods.
Nice. Well, I'm going to take myself off screen so that you can use both of your cameras and get started with the recipe.
I have actually a small little presentation.
Oh, you want? Okay, then let's do that.
Let's do that first, and then we can. Let's see. Let me share my screen real quick.
Put you back in speaker mode then.
Okay. Oops. All right, here we go. So returning to health, roots of Latin American cuisine. And this is a little bit about myself, which we already talked about. I was born and raised here in Puerto Rico, and raising my children has been my greatest gift. And this is my family. This was actually a few years ago. So for those who don't think you can raise kids on a plant-based diet, super healthy. So just to talk a little bit about our healthcare crisis in Latin America. Latin America's struggles with chronic health conditions are very similar to what we see in the US and other Western nations, because we have exported our way of eating full of animal and processed products to countries rooted in agriculture and unprocessed foods. The rise of chronic illness has risen and at an alarming rate that's almost impossible to keep, no matter what healthcare system. But we know that to make matters worse, many regions in Latin America are lacking the equipment found in hospitals in more advanced economies. It all adds up to risky and potentially life-threatening situations for many Latin American residents. If we look at the Hispanic population in the US, there's 60.6 million Hispanics, which accounts for about 18.5% of the population. And we know as an ethnic group, we're growing. We're the country's second largest racial group. So this is important that we talk about this. And COVID-19's economic recession has been disproportionate on its impact on Latino workers. We know 37% of Latinos have had someone in their household lose their employer, provided health insurance benefits during the recession. Also, cultural barriers, such as the fact that nearly a third of Latinos are not fully fluent in English, may also make the healthcare system less accessible to those that need it the most. And we pay the price. So staying healthy is free. Getting sick is super expensive, not only in medications, pills, and procedures, but at the expense of our health and quality of life. We're undernourished and overfed, and we know that this problem is serious and global. And I know Chef AJ has presented this topic in many ways with many speakers. We know that 75 to 90% of doctor visits are thought to be related to lifestyle. And modern medical treatments, as we mentioned before, they're just addressing symptoms of disease and rarely addressing the cause. So what is the common denominator of all of these chronic conditions? We know it's the standard American diet. And it's the standard Puerto Rican diet too, which we have here at the moment. So what's the optimal diet? One that provides sufficient calories, more or less, nourishes our body with all of these awesome nutrients, plus vitamin B12, does not contribute to chronic inflammation, and it's in ecological balance with our planet. And that's what a whole foods plant-based diet is a lifestyle and a diet that's minimally processed and includes many whole grains, fruits, vegetables, and legumes. Many people get that diet label off and we call it a lifestyle. It's not a short-term punishment charged by guilt. So I don't like to think of a whole food plant-based diet as something that it's just excluding of the wonderful things that we love, but it's actually including a variety of flavors and health. So we know that following this lifestyle helps to lower our risk of prostate, breast, and other cancers, prevent and reverse heart disease, prevent and treat diabetes, lose weight, have more energy, live longer, and great quality of life. And what's the price? Simply changing our diet. So it's never been so easy or relatively effortless to achieve such profound benefits. The power of plants. We know that plants contain fiber. They're the only food that contains fiber. Animal products don't contain fiber. And dietary fiber is a form of complex carbohydrates. We know that they're easily digestible, and soluble fiber helps to control cholesterol levels. Insoluble fiber helps to prevent constipation, remove toxins, and feed our gut bacteria. So super important. And this also promotes weight management and satiety. Also, plants contain a variety of antioxidants and phytonutrients. So that's what I love to talk about and how we can strengthen this immune system. Most are low in calories and fat and no cholesterol. Animal foods, on the contrary, don't contain fiber. They don't contain antioxidants and phytonutrients, contain cholesterol, animal protein, saturated fat, linked to the development of chronic diseases. They're also a source of heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which have been linked to cancer and promote the formation of TMAO, which is really bad for our body. These are ultra-processed foods. So when we talk about eating vegan, is not necessarily healthy, but you can eat a vegan whole food plant-based diet, which is what we do promote. And like Chef AJ, we don't include any oils in our cooking. They don't occur naturally in nature. They're low in nutritional value, no fiber, no minerals, and they're 100% fat. And saturated fat injures the endothelium lining of our arteries. So we follow the green light and include lots of plants, unrefined foods, and stay away from the red light items, which are processed, ultra-processed animal products, oils, sugars, and fat, and salt. So this is just a little bit about whole food plant-based foods going back into the roots of Latin American cuisine. And most of Latin American cuisine has some common ingredients, common components because of our heritage and that whole mix of the Spanish and the African and the native Indians. So we have this whole mix, melting pot of all of these influences. So plantains and bananas, you can find that in most Latin American cuisine, as well as other vegetables here to the right. That's a malanga, that's a root. I'm actually going to be cooking that today and showing you. On the left, that's a breadfruit. So if you've heard about jackfruit, it's a family, in the family of jackfruit, but breadfruit is actually, you don't eat it ripe. You eat it when it's green, and we make a mashed, like a substitute for mashed potatoes, or you can also make tostones, which traditionally they fry, but we bake to make delicious fritters without having to fry. We also cook with calabaza, which is a type of squash, pumpkin. That's on the right, and on the left, other roots. We cook with a lot of roots. So this is yautía. In different countries, they call it different words, malanga as well. We also use a variety of peppers. We have the sweet peppers and hot peppers in some countries. Lots of garlic. I cook with so much garlic. I think that's why mosquitoes don't bite me, because I eat so much garlic. And then we have herbs, lots of different herbs. This is culantro, which I'll be cooking with as well. It's a cousin of cilantro, and it tastes amazing. I add it to most of my recipes, as well as in the bean family. So we have a variety of beans throughout Latin America. In Puerto Rico, we eat almost every bean, the red, the white, the black, but the typical, the more commonly found are going to be your red beans and your pigeon peas, gandules. Gandules, which I'll show you today, we're going to make a recipe with that, are in between, in my opinion, in between a lentil and a pea. So it's not, you can't really, you have to cook it more than peas, but less than you would cook other beans. In the world of fruits, there's so many fruits, nature's candy. So I'm always looking for local fruit. I have here, I never leave home without my mangoes. I always have, I have a mango every single day. Passion fruit, love passion fruit. I make dressings and sauces with it. And you can find the frozen passion fruit if it's not something you find locally. I also make a variety of dishes with quinoa, which is not really in the Puerto Rican cuisine, but we find it in other countries such as Peru and other Latin American countries. So we integrate it into some of our dishes to make them more nutritious. To the left here, I have a sancocho, which is a root vegetable stew. And I added plantains and yucca, which is cassava as well, corn, which is another staple of Latin American cuisine. And to the right, you can find a paella made with quinoa and rice, as well as mushrooms to substitute the animal ingredients. You go to Mexico, you'll find ceviche, you'll find tacos, which can be made with mushrooms, cauliflower, tofu. There's so many varieties, and I just love Mexican cuisine. Venezuela, here we have left on the left they call it a pabellón criollo, which is actually typically a rice with a dish with rice, meat, plantains, and avocados, and then they make like a sauce, guasacaca or a garlic sauce. So here we used jackfruit instead of the meat, and beans, black beans made without oil, and the plantains baked instead of frying. On the right here, we have arepas, which are made traditionally in Colombia and Venezuela, and they're patties made out of corn, or in this instance, we made them with cassava or yucca. Delicious. All right, guys, so we're ready to start cooking. This is my favorite part. I'm going to stop the share here. Well, actually, before we go, this is a list of resources. I know Chef AJ is including that in the description. So, but just in case you guys have questions, I'm always happy to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Oh, that was wonderful. The herb you said that tasted like cilantro, but wasn't cilantro. Could you talk a little bit about what that is and where you get it? Because people were asking in the chat.
This is that herb. It's called either culantro, C-U-L-A-N-T-R-O, or recao, depending on recao, R-E-C-A-O. And it has a very similar taste, but cilantro, I always add it at the end of cooking because it loses its magical taste. This one is a little sturdier, so you can add it more towards the beginning of the cooking. Where do you find this? This is found mainly in tropical areas. If you're in Florida or the eastern part of the US, you might be able to find it sometimes, but mainly in the Caribbean, you find this a lot. And it's optional. If you can't find it, you got to work with whatever you have locally. But if you do travel and you find it, it smells amazing. So I recommend that you guys try it if you ever get here.
For people that have that reaction to cilantro, would they have the same reaction to this herb?
You mean the taste, tasting like soap? Mm-hmm. I don't think so. I don't think that you can try in little amounts and see, but I haven't had people react in my experience that way.
I've never seen it, but we do have a Latino market here, so I'm going to check it out.
Try it out. So yeah, we make a sofrito, which I'm going to talk about, but it includes, this is our sofrito, and you can show it in that.
I'm going to put you in gallery mode and
there we go. So this is a sofrito. Most of the Puerto Rican dishes start out with this base, which is we have the culantro or recao, we have cilantro, we have sweet ají, which is these little peppers that are sweet, they're not spicy at all, garlic, peppers, bell peppers, and onions. And these are actually, I always do my best to try and buy local. And most of these items here are local items. These onions are grown here in Puerto Rico, the mushrooms as well. So what we do with Puerto Rican gastronomy, Puerto Rican cooking, is typically you take us an hour or a weekend or once in a while, and you chop up a lot of onion, all of these ingredients, put them in a food processor, and you make like a paste, and you put them in little cubes and you freeze them and keep some in your refrigerator, and you use this as a base for almost every recipe that you cook. Okay, I like to use whatever I have frozen as my sofrito, but I always like to cut up some fresh as well. So we might have both cameras all the time, so that way people can follow along. All right, so I'm gonna move this one further back so you guys can see a little better. All right, here we go. Okay, so we are making a power bowl, and like we said before, a Boricua bowl or a Puerto Rican bowl. And we have a plate here with greens. Greens are gonna be our base. There we go. And I like to include local greens. This is a local lettuce that we get here, very similar to the romaine. If you can get arugula, even better. I eat arugula almost every day because we know it's a food that is super high in nitrates. One of the highest plant-based foods in nitrates. There's 480 milligrams in 480 or 450 milligrams in one serving of 100 grams of arugula. So we want to eat that quite often. So we already have that ready. I also went ahead and cooked a batch of brown rice. So we eat a lot of rice in Puerto Rico. So this is our brown rice cooked. Super easy. I don't do the 2-to-1 ratio of water unless you're only cooking 1 cup of rice, because it'll be too mushy if you cook 3 cups like I did here. Almost about 1.5 cups more of liquid than rice, or you can boil your rice and strain it if that works for you. So we have our brown rice. I also went ahead and baked a couple other items, but let's get to the actual stir frying and sauteing. We're gonna make a sauce with mushrooms as well as gandules. And let me show you here before we get there. I want to show you the plantains. Plantains have different stages of ripening. So this is important if you're not familiar with cooking plantains. This is a green plantain. Okay, this one is when it starts to ripen. You'll see it's like a little yellow. Still, plantains, you have to cook them before you eat them. They're not like bananas where you can eat raw. Okay, and then these two are ripe. This one, I will give it another day. If you see some green on the tip, it means it still needs another day. You can cook it now, but it won't be as sweet. So, when they start to get brown like this is when they get really sweet. So I'm going to show you how we're going to cook. We're going to cook both plantains both ways. Sweet, the ripe, and also the green plantain. Okay, so if we have the ripe plantain or sweet plantain, we're going to cut the ends off. There's different ways that you can cook plantains. Sweet plantains or ripe plantains. So you can either bake them, you can boil them, and you can bake them with the peel or sliced. If you want to do like quick and easy way, if they're really ripe, you just cut the ends off and then make a slit right across the peel. So it gives it some space here to when they cook, they swell up. So that way, if you keep the peel, it'll retain its natural sweetness. And that way it works really well. And there's no need to add any butter, obviously, or anything else because it's naturally sweet. My favorite way, I do that sometimes, but my favorite way is I just peel it and I slice it like this. And I bake it. So when it's really ripe, I bake at 425 Fahrenheit for about 15-20 minutes. It'll be ready. Now I'm going to show you. I'll show you how. Some plantains here that I baked, and that's how they look after They're baked and no need to fry. Most of the time, if you see plantains in a restaurant or in the frozen section, they're fried. So this is how we avoid that. I also roasted some calabaza. This is our calabaza, which is a type of squash. I'll show you here. These are some of the foods that I showed you in that presentation. So this is a calabaza, like a type of pumpkin, and you find this all year round in Puerto Rico. I'm lucky enough to find it in Florida. So I didn't peel it and I just cut it up. I just take the seeds out and I roast it. You can roast this whole thing too, or cut it in half. If you're making like a cheese sauce with, instead of a butternut squash, you can use this. Other items here, we have yucca. This is another root vegetable and it's called cassava too, yucca, Y-U-C-A. And this is a type of chayote, very different from the Mexican chayote. And you can, usually it's cooked, filled with meat here, but you can obviously fill it with vegetables and bake it. And this is yautía, which is another root vegetable. And this one is one of my favorites. This one and malanga, which I showed you a picture of. This is, if you've ever had those bags of taro chips, this is what you're eating. It's so tasty. I eat this every week, different ways. You can, so you take the peel out. This is something we do have to peel. And you can cut it and make fries with it, or we can make mashed malanga, like mashed potatoes. No need for anything else. The flavor is amazing. So what I did with this malanga, I went ahead and peeled it and cut it into slices to make fries, malanga fries, as well as the yucca. This yucca did the same thing. Okay, I'm going to show you my fries here. And so the trick to getting crispy fries, there they are baked. I use my oven quite a bit, is after you cut them into fries, you want to boil them, okay? And these don't take that long to cook. They cook even quicker than potatoes. So these you want to boil for about 5 minutes. I would say 4 minutes. 4 minutes, drain them, season them. I add a little bit of garlic powder. If you're not using salt, you can use a little bit of the Benson's, or herbs. And I bake them. And look at that color. I love that purple color. So this is going to be part of our bowl, part of our power bowl. With the plantains, so that was the ripe version. And get rid of these for a second. I'm going to put them in a sheet with parchment paper. So parchment paper is your friend when you're not using oils and fats, because that's how you get them to not stick. Now, if you have a green plantain, what you can do with this is you can make soup. You can actually grate it. And I use this a lot in my sancocho. This gives the broth an amazing flavor. You can also make chips, like plantain chips with this, or you can make tostones, which are also fried in Puerto Rico, but I boil them first for about 20 minutes with the peel, and then I mash. Maybe one day, another time, I can make you tostones. Today, I'm going to show you how I make the chips. So I just cut the ends off. Now, when it's green, it's a little harder to take the peel off. So you do the slit, and then you need another knife, and you just carefully start to get the peel off. I like to make my cooking demos as interactive as possible. So I can answer questions at the end, but feel free, if Chef AJ wants to ask questions as I go, feel free to do that as well. Okay, I'm taking, and I don't care if it doesn't look pretty, it's rustic. There we go. So just make sure you don't get any of that peel in there.
I do see a question, if you don't mind, from Monarch, and it's, when shopping for malanga, how do you choose a good one?
Perfect. That's a great question. The most important thing when shopping for malanga is that it's not moldy. So make sure when you buy the malanga, you don't see any green stuff growing on the outside, or because sometimes it's been a while since they've been sitting there in the shelf and they start to get moldy. That's That's the best tip. Look at the flesh. Usually when they're at the store, you can see this flesh that is not brown and moldy. Great question. Okay, so back to my green plantain. So what I do now is I'm gonna cut it. If you don't have a mandolin, then with a knife, just cut it real thin slices like this. Okay, so little thin slices. And again, the same trick of boiling works really well. So just boil these for like 3 minutes when the water starts boiling, because they're so thin. You don't want to overcook them and get them into mush. So you boil them and then you bake them. And this is what we've got. We've got some crispy plantains here. Hear that crisp? Nice and crispy. Perfect. Okay, so you got those taken care of. Now, we're gonna make some pigeon peas. So right here, right here, I have my pot, and these are pigeon peas. These are the gandules. And they're actually very popular in India as well, other countries, but in Puerto Rico, we make rice and gandules for almost every big occasion, a get together, or for the holidays. This is our main go-to dish, and it's made with rice and traditionally with pork and other things. So we take all of that out of the equation and make it with a little smoked paprika. I actually have a recipe for this on my site. So if you want to follow along, then you can look for that. But here, I actually wanted to show you a very quick and easy way to cook them. So I buy them frozen. I boil them for about 10 minutes. And now I drain them. So I'm going to cook here. I'm going to add some of the sofrito, the onions and the peppers. And I do this with almost every bean. Okay, so it could be gandules. Another day I'll make it with red beans or chickpeas. So I'm going to saute the onions here. Trying to find my spoon. Where did it go? Here. Oh, here we go. I miss my kitchen. All right, so I'm just sauteing here the onion. Again, no added oils. The onions are going to give out their natural little juices and essential oils. Smell that, yum. We're going to add pepper. We have here red bell pepper and a yellow pepper. Quick and easy. And I love to do meal prep. So I will get a lot of things already prepped and cut for power bowl. So if you have like 5 or 6 different things already ready in your fridge, then it's so much easier to put these recipes together. I have that for a minute. I'm gonna add. All right, I'm gonna add my gandules in here. Remember that I had already boiled them. You can also find these canned, but I'm not a big fan of canned gandules. I prefer to get them frozen, if possible, or fresh. You can also find them dry. They are a little bit different. They taste different, but they're really delicious and nutritious. Now I'm going to add garlic. Now, take note that I have garlic here in my pilon. This is a traditional Puerto Rican gadget from our origins. I'm assuming is the Taino, the Native American. I should research that a little bit better. But we always mash our garlic here. We also mash our herbs, and make a mofongo, which is mashed plantains, the green plantain or the yucca, with lots of garlic and spices. So if you've been to Puerto Rico and you've seen this at the restaurant, they sometimes serve the mashed plantains in the pilon to get all that garlic flavor in there. So we're gonna add some garlic in here. Again, I'm a garlic lover, so don't be alarmed when you see all the garlic I'm gonna add. You can tailor it to your own liking. And I always add the garlic towards mid-cooking so that I don't lose so much of that garlic flavor. Now I'm gonna add a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I have apple cider vinegar here. You can also use other vinegars if you like, have a preference. You can use that. Apple cider is something that I love, and it's like my dressing of choice. Yum. You can add a little bit of pepper, or season it with more herbs if you like. You can do that as well. So I'm going to put this aside here while we make our salsa criolla. So that's going to continue to cook here on this other stove, on this other burner, while I start the salsa criolla. Now this is a sauce that we usually, we dress a lot of our recipes with this sauce. And all it is, again, remember that sofrito that I told you about with the onions and peppers and all that stuff? We're gonna start with our onions. There we go. We're gonna saute our onions. We're gonna add now the peppers as well. So we have here red and yellow pepper, as well as ají dulce, the sweet little guys, these guys that I told you about before. Now, if you're not a big fan of the big chunks, you can process in a food processor and just, have the paste like I was telling you about. I love the big chunks. And that was not always the truth. And I don't know if you guys can relate with this, but when you change to a whole food plant-based diet, your taste buds change and you start to actually appreciate foods in such a different way. Like growing up, I never really enjoyed chickpeas and peppers. I don't know why. And I changed to plant-based eating. And I love them. I can eat them with nothing added, just plain peppers, plain chickpeas. And I don't know when that switch happened, but it was just rediscovering food was so amazing. Also, thinking outside the box. Like growing up, I never had a taste of green beans, for instance, how like true fresh green beans, because I always had the ones from the can or, at the lunch, at the lunchroom, they're not very appealing. But when I actually tasted green beans for the first time without any of that stuff, and it was amazing. Okay, so now I have here, remember the culantro that I mentioned before, this guy? I'm gonna add it here.
Linda would like to know if that's a Salad Master pan that you're using.
Wow, Linda, you got a great eye. Yes, it's a Salad Master. I always say, make sure when you're shopping for kitchen items, that you really do invest in good quality cookware. Don't go for anything like cheap Teflon or aluminum. Like you want to go for stainless steel. Invest in that because this is what's coming in contact with our food. We're cooking our foods. Unless you're eating a raw diet, then you really try to get good quality cookware. And this is a great investment, I have to say. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars on expensive cookware to eat plant-based. Don't ever think that. You don't need an expensive blender or Vitamix. These are just tools. If you can afford it and you want to do it, then go for it, okay? But they are, I really, personally, I love to cook with them. Okay, so now I'm gonna add, here I have some tomato sauce, and I do use organic tomato sauce, or you can use crushed tomatoes. As well as I have some Roma tomato, or not Roma, I'm sorry, cherry tomatoes. These are rainbow cherry tomatoes from our neighboring island from the Dominican Republic. That's the most local I could find. I'm sure we can grow them here, but not available at the store where I went to purchase. Look at this color. I love when I'm cooking, I'm always doing my check and assessing, making sure I get lots of variety, lots of color. That's super important whenever we're eating and cooking. When you're at the store and you're shopping for food, take a look at your cart. Is it full of boxes and packages, or is it full of fresh produce? That's very, very important that we do that assessment, because, you know, if we go shopping hungry, you might fall into the trap of getting stuff that's processed. So try not to do that. All right, so I also have here, I always like to cook with a little bit of non-alcoholic wine or beer, non-alcoholic beer to gives the sauces a nice touch. I'm gonna add a little bit of, you can do white wine, or I'll use some Japanese cooking wine, the mirin, it's also great. Just do know if you use alcoholic or regular wine, I used to think that the alcohol would evaporate when cooking, but it takes a while. So better to use the non-alcoholic if you're using it at all. Now, anytime I use some tomato sauce, I like to add a little bit of sweetness to the dish. And I typically do that with dates. So I'll use date paste. Or if I have dry apricots, I'll use some of the apricot paste. Traveling, I did not bring my dates, and I had a hard time finding them, but I did bring a little bit of dehydrated dates. So it's what they call a date sugar, which is just dehydrated dates. And I'm just gonna add a little bit of that. But dates, whole like date paste is my favorite sweetener here. All right, so now I'm gonna add the mushrooms. So this is just an optional item. You can just keep the sauce as it is. This is the criollo sauce. I added mushrooms because, well, first of all, I love mushrooms. That's no secret if you've been following me for a while. They're loaded with nutrients. They're great for cancer prevention. They're a good source for vitamin D if they've been exposed to the sun and vitamin D. And these are local. Actually, these are grown here in Puerto Rico. So why not? Let me lower my temperature here. I forget about my gandules. So I'm gonna add them. Yum. And this is my go-to also. If I'm super hungry and for some reason I ran out of my my meal prep, or I don't have leftovers, guess what? We always have greens ready. I'll saute some mushrooms and add some beans. And that's my quick and easy lunch. Love it. You can add some herbs or pepper here. I'm gonna use a little bit of the Benson's. Easy. All right, so let's wait. Let's cook that. 2 minutes there, let those mushrooms cook. I am obsessed with mushrooms. I cook, my girls say, Mom, like, please stop. Like every day I want to make a recipe. And coming when we're actually visiting here, our family in Puerto Rico. And so before we left, I had gone crazy at the market and I had bought so many mushrooms and I was afraid they were going to go bad. So I told my girls, what are we going to do? So let's make a cream of mushrooms. So we made this big batch of cream of mushroom soup and it disappeared instantly because we all love them. So just think of ways, to include them. If you're not super fan of the actual mushrooms, like put them in a sauce add them to, you know, whatever casserole, you hide them in there, but eat them because they are very good for you. All right, I'm gonna add garlic to this. I forgot, again, a lot of garlic. I always, when I make a recipe, I start with double or triple the amount of the garlic because I know it's not gonna be enough for me. Yum, this smells so good. Any other question, guys?
Let's see. Well, there's a question from a different Linda saying, are you using two cameras? They love what you're doing side by side is how they're seeing it.
Great. Love it. Thank you to my assistant today, Christine, who's a fellow Food for Life instructor and plant-based vegan. And yeah, we got a tribe and we support each other wherever we go. You know, that's one of my favorite things about our lifestyle. It just changes your life, not only physical, but emotional, and how you see things and how you connect with people. And so it's been the best gift for my family. I really, really feel that way.
A very nice comment from Isabel. She said, WEPA, W-E-P-A. I am from Ponce, Puerto Rico. I started eating more veggies before the pandemic, not fully vegan. I was wondering about all those root veggies, and I'm glad Chef AJ brought you on. I can't wait to make this.
Yay! Thank you for sharing that with us, and welcome to this journey. It's different for all of us. Some of us, it takes longer, you know, but it's all about opening, you know, open mind and just keep on doing it. You can do this. If you fall off the wagon, get back on it. Don't give up. This is totally doable. All right, so this needs to cook for a few seconds. I like my mushrooms to be soft and cooked. But at the end, we're gonna add our cilantro. We have your cilantro cut up. And I'm so sorry for those of you who don't enjoy it. But you know, if you don't, then just skip it. That's perfectly okay. But you add that right at the end. Now, at every meal, I love to include cruciferous vegetables. So when I make my power bowls, I'll either add cauliflower or broccoli or cabbage, arugula. As I said, we eat arugula almost every day, and that's usually raw arugula, or I add it to my cooked dishes. And the trick to retain the sulforaphane, you know, with broccoli is you want to chop it up and leave it, before you cook it, leave it for about 40 minutes, okay? So that you don't lose all that cancer-fighting property of the enzyme that converts sulforaphane. So lots of great things that we learn in culinary medicine. Here we go. Okay, so here we go. Let's put together our bowl. We have our greens, okay? And now we're gonna start dishing it out. So let me just get all the components here. I'm gonna bring everything closer so you guys can see. And this is to show you, you don't need a big kitchen to cook this way either. You can do it in a vacation or a condo like I'm doing today and survive.
I see a question from Peter, and that is, could you talk about the malleability of the sense of taste?
Could I talk about what?
The malleability of the sense of taste. Maybe the taste preferences can be changed.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know like all the science behind it, but I can tell you that, you know, our taste buds take about 4 to 6, I should say, 4 to 6 weeks to change and to transform. So you got to give it time. And when you're switching your eating habits, you got to have a little patience. So, you know, initially when you taste, for example, the difference between whole milk and skim milk, you know, it's like, oh, wow, or whole milk or milk and almond milk. It's very different. But once you keep exposing your taste buds to all these different flavors and textures with patience, you'll see that you'll embrace them and you'll enjoy them better. Okay. All right. So I have here the dish. I'm going to add the rice. Sure, my husband's gonna be happy because he always gets to have the dish I prepare in my workshops. Sometimes my daughters fight him over it because they like the beautiful present. We have the rice here. We're gonna add the gandules here, right on top.
Are you currently teaching any cooking classes, either in person or virtually?
So I'm super busy right now with the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, which we haven't talked about that, and I should mention that before we go. But I am the director of content and culinary content and Spanish content. So we are working on getting resources to Spanish-speaking communities. So I'm super busy with a Spanish plant-based certificate. We do have, if you want to become a plant-based expert, take our plant-based nutrition certificate in English. That's already available. So I've been busy with that, but I also have clients that I do one-on-one. And I do have some group classes coming up in the fall. I have not put them in my calendar yet, but they'll be coming up soon. So I'm putting here my pumpkin. Just if you sign up to our newsletter or go to our website, you'll be alerted of any upcoming events that we have going on. All right, so we got our pumpkin. I'm gonna put in, or calabaza, I should say. I'm gonna put in here our sweet plantain. Wait, I just want to make sure I don't skip anything. Okay, we got here our mushrooms and salsa criolla here on the side. And then we're gonna add our Malanga fries and our Yucca fries, as well as our plantain chips. Puerto Ricans, we love crispy stuff. Gotta have some crispy items in our menu. And for some color, and you can reheat these as well. So say you have leftovers, then the next day, just add a little bit of vegetable broth or water and bake them again. There we go. I'll just leave it with 2. That's good enough. And there you go. And you have your power plate, or your, not power plate, your power bowl, Puerto Rican power bowl.
That is just unbelievably delicious looking.
And super filling.
In the colors.
Yes, I really do. And you know, even the calabaza, we're so used to peeling our vegetables and to, you know, getting rid of that peel, when in reality, there's a ton of nutrition under the peel. So whenever we have sweet potato, potatoes, whenever you can keep that peel, you want to go ahead and keep it. And I love to keep the peel in my squash. So that's why I roast it with the peel on. Obviously, there are certain things like malanga, you can't do that, but whenever you can, eat the peel. So you can switch it up. Like one day you'll do that, and then another day, maybe instead of the calabaza, you can do sweet potato, or you can do chayote, or regular different potatoes, or we could do butternut squash if that's what you have locally, and then different beans. And you can use also eggplant instead of the mushrooms for a different twist, maybe some tofu. That same sauce with baked tofu, delicious.
Yeah. Sarah says, this is so awesome. Our Spanish community needs help. Most of the resources are in English, and I have to translate to Spanish to share with my Facebook group.
Oh, so yes, please make them aware. PCRM and the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, as well as Dr. Greger, they have all started to incorporate a lot of Spanish content. So please share these resources with them. And we're working on the plant-based nutrition certificate, so super excited about that. As well as we have leaders in Latin America. We're actually partnering with different physicians and nutritionists and nurses and other plant-based ambassadors in Puerto Rico and other parts of the Caribbean and Latin America and Spain to help support their efforts and create a hub where they can actually collaborate with each other. So that's very, very important. I know, Chef AJ, you've had here Dr. Gabriel Lapman and Yael Hasbani, who are a power team in Argentina. And then this is very important that we get to know who they are, where they are, and support all of these initiatives.
Yeah. What do you think, if there is resistance in the Spanish-speaking community to plant-based, what do you think it is?
You mean within our Latin community?
Yes, like when there is resistance, what do you think that resistance is?
Well, I think most of the time they're thinking that they have to give up their cultural preferences, their food, their cuisine. And I think that's a misconception. I believe, most of the items that I used to eat, I can now make plant-based, even, the traditional holiday dishes. And so it's just having that, you put that wall in front of you. And so that can be intimidating. Also, there's a whole factor of support within the community. And when people don't feel that they have the support of their loved ones, then it's easier for them to stray away from healthier options. So finding that support, I didn't have that support within my center and nucleus and family. So I went outside and I found the support. And guess what? That actually translated into my own family embracing it. My mom is vegan. My dad is pretty much almost there. Most of my friends and my brother, so it keeps on, that those seeds keep sprouting. So, it's important to not give up.
That is fantastic. I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'll put myself back on just so I can say goodbye to you properly. This was just a wonderful presentation. Do you use plantains a lot in your cooking in general?
I do, especially the ripe plantains, because they're so easy to include. If you were making this dish and don't have any other sweetener, if you grate that sweet plantain, that's also an alternative for the dates. So they are very versatile. You can use them in a lot of different dishes.
Because, Trader Joe's sells them frozen, and I bought them and I'm wondering what should I do with them? I thought maybe put them in the air fryer, but what would you do with frozen plantains?
Yeah, well, you got to be careful. And sometimes when they're frozen, they're already fried once. So you have to be careful with those. But if they're not, I would just put them in my air fryer or in a soup or in a casserole. I add them to my beans. So yeah, or eat them. Sometimes where I'm just craving a plantain, I'll just put it in the oven, the whole thing, and just eat it like that.
They're so great because they can be used savory or sweet.
Exactly. Yes. Sometimes I buy them green because I want to make a recipe, and then a couple days, like I just bought these like 2 days ago, and look, they're already almost turning yellow. So just use them in whatever stage they are.
Yeah, they're not as sweet as bananas, so they go really well with savory dishes like beans and rice and things like that.
That's a great point. Also, you can use ripe plantains on almost every recipe where you use bananas. Like to make pancakes, you can use the ripe plantains. To make banana bread, you can make plantain bread. So that I even prefer them over the banana for some reason.
Do you ever use vertilago?
What is it?
Vertilago, in English, it's purslane.
No, I'm not familiar.
So it's a weed that often grows in the cracks of the sidewalk, but they use it a lot in Mexico when I teach there. And it's supposedly the highest plant source of the omega-3 fatty acids, the highest vegetable source, not other than
really
nuts and seeds. Yeah, and it's very good. It's very mild, and
I'll have to look for that. Huh.
In the Spanish stores, it's labeled as verdolago, and it's about 3 or 4 bunches for $1.
Oh, so and you buy it fresh.
Yeah, I've only seen it fresh, to be honest.
Okay.
And some people use this. I don't care for the stems as much, but I like the leaves, and sometimes they cook it in Mexico, and yeah, it's really good actually.
Wow, I'll have to talk to my Mexican friends. How come I didn't know about this?
I don't know, but I heard about it, believe it or not, at Vegetarian Summerfest when Dr. Carrie Saunders was doing a presentation on omega-3 fatty acids, and somebody said, well, I don't want to eat nuts and seeds. And she said, well, then eat this. And then I looked it up and I found it, and they don't have it at like Whole Foods. I asked John Mackey, the CEO, to carry it. He said, nobody would buy it but you, but every Latino market and even some Asian markets I've been in have it. And it's very, very inexpensive.
Oh, wow. Well, now I'll be so curious about it. I'm going to start looking for it.
Bouillette, who's a guest on this show on Thursday, says your dish is a work of art. He even took screenshots.
Oh, thank you. You guys made my day. I love cooking with my audience.
Well, you're very passionate about what you do, and you do it very well. So I thank you so much for coming on the show and doing this beautiful presentation for us.
Thank you, Chef AJ. I'm a huge fan, and I'm really grateful for you helping us spread the word.
It is my pleasure. It is my mission, actually. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow if you like cooking presentations, because we are doing an Iron Chef, and it's Chef Dora versus Chef Ali, and you don't want to miss it. Thanks again, Evelisse. It was really a wonderful presentation.